Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a creator request, which is where a smaller band gets in contact with me and asks me to check out their stuff. I got an email from Ravine, said, "Hey, we're a post-hardcore and metalcore band from Italy. We'd be very pleased if you could listen to our single Palm. Let us know your thoughts." Alright, so let's dig into this. I'm always excited for post-hardcore. I'm also pretty excited for metalcore most of the time as well. So let's dive in and see what Ravine is bringing to us with the track Palm. They still have that clean guitar bit from the intro going. Rhythmic ideas within the chord progression. Slightly different progression for our chorus. I like that little bit of melody at the end of that lick. I like the bouncing around of sounds. Is this gonna be a fully linear track? Wow. Um, so structure is something that I'm fascinated by, especially with the ever-changing idea of mainstream structure. And we talked a little bit about this in last week's live stream. But the current trend right now is we're seeing a shift from the ABABCB, first chorus, bridge, chorus, to just getting rid of that final chorus and just ending on the bridge. So we have an ABABC pattern where our bridge is our outro. These guys just said, why do we even return to anything? Let's do verse, let's do chorus, let's do a breakdown, and then an outro, which the outro isn't just like a 10-second thing to take us out. It's an entire section on its own. So we have basically an ABCD idea with no repetition, no callbacks, just barreling forward, getting all these riffs out of the way, calling it a day. And so the song ends up being under 3 minutes because of that. It's and see, it's sort of a double whammy, but maybe this works in their favor. The song never feels like it's taking its time, and thus it feels like it's over too soon. But it does this, one, by never repeating anything. a repetition can instill a type of longing for the next, unless it is super catchy, which is why choruses also are the most catchiest sections. The chorus is also called a hook in pop music because if it doesn't catch you and you're forced to listen to it 2 or 3 times, you're going to get bored of it and turn the song off, which is not great for singles. If you bought the album, they already got your money, so they don't care at that point. But so if you're going to be repetitive, it better be good. And so they say, well, we just won't be repetitive then. We're just going to run straight through, so we don't have to worry about that at all. Um, but then it's also just like 4 sections and we're done. And so it feels short on 2 levels. Uh, Technically on 3 also because it's less than 3 minutes long. It's a short track that doesn't repeat anything and moves through the sections rather quickly. And so I think this is kind of a smart idea for a single specifically, but also for an iterative band like this. And Ravine, if this is the first time checking us out, let me break this down so it doesn't sound like I'm bad mouthing anyone. Bands, music, art, all of it just kind of falls into 2 categories. Innovative, where you build something brand new. These are going to be like the points where electronic music was made, or pop rock was made, or punk rock, whatever. The big moments when a genre is like being built up. And then there's iterative bands who take the ideas that other people have crafted and refine them and perfect them. And we need both sides of the equation, otherwise, we're just going to have a lot of really loose, rough music out there, or art in any capacity. We need the people who are inventive enough to make new things, and we need the people who are really good at refining stuff to solidify it and sand off the edges. And so, if you're an iterative band, you're working with a style that other people have done as well. By sheer definition, this is going to be a majority of art creators. And so, when you're working with a sound that is, especially with metalcore, which is hyper popular right now, it really, being able to stand out is difficult. It really is. Um, and so a lot of bands decide to bring in new sounds, right? And this is where some of the innovation comes in. And we see bands introducing electronic elements, hip hop elements. Metalcore is really branching out into be like this catch all that incorporates anything at this point in time. And instead, you guys decide to separate yourselves from the pack by getting in, showing your riffs, and getting out. Saying, if you liked us, there's more of that there's more where that came from. And if you didn't, that's fine. We didn't take up too much of your time, but I hope you enjoyed it anyways. That kind of deal. And I just really appreciate that. I think it works really well for a single. You don't overstay your welcome at all. Even if somebody isn't um, super on board with this and they're just like, yeah, this is all right music, I could listen to it. You're over and done with at a point that they're going to be like, I kind of want more of that now. I wasn't ready for that to be over, and I wasn't even really, jamming with it. It was just okay. Um, so like I said, I think it's just really smart for a single, especially for a smaller group who's trying to get their name out. Yeah, especially with bringing this into society and the shorter attention spans. You get in, you show what you got, and you get out. You don't repeat anything. It's I wonder if this is going to be something that analysts, especially in marketing, might catch on to, and we see more of a trend. You guys might be setting the ground with this. I don't think I've heard anything that goes in this structure. And maybe I get into the lyrics, and linearity is a strong part of the theme, and it wasn't done from a marketing standpoint. But I understand that singles have to have a specific element to them. Not every song can be a single. And so if you're going out of your way to craft a single, there's going to be marketing elements that come into the creation process. And if you guys did this intentionally for this reason, I think y'all are onto something. I'm curious now to listen to more of your stuff, maybe stuff that isn't singles, that aren't designed to bring people in, just other tracks you've written, to see maybe where you go with less restrictions possibly on your music. Again, I don't know if this was purposefully done, but if it was, smart idea. Getting off of structure though, I want to talk about how most of this is composed. Um, the guitars handle chordal ideas and rhythmic ideas. The drums are the bass I can toss in there too, rhythmic and melodic, or sorry, rhythmic and chordal. The drums through a lot of this are rather metronomic. They sit in the background and create the pulse for the track. And then our vocalist is textural and vocabulary, storytelling. I don't really have a word for that one. But how a lot of this is crafted is your guitars will be like, okay, here's the chord progression. Bump, 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 bump. All right, we got our chord progression. How are we going to go about playing this? And I think it's really interesting listening to the counterplay between the guitars, and I'm including bass. When I say guitars, I mean the electric and the bass guitars, and the vocals. Because when the vocals are a bit lower, you guys have no problem leaning into that. And you'll just hit the note and allow it to ring. When the vocals go higher, though, you put some interesting syncopation and rhythmic ideas into your chordal playing. And so the guitar playing never really gets stale. It's not just the same rhythm over and over and over. Sometimes we'll get different rhythms for all four chords. But I thought it was really neat how you paired it along with what the vocals were doing, and the drums tended to follow along as well, rhythmically at least. They didn't follow the same rhythm, but they would follow in the speed of rhythm, how short of time there was between individual hits on the kit. And it would give the song this ebb and flow, this push and pull, and the whole band was in on it. I love that. I think it was an interesting way to kick off our verse. Throughout the rest of the track, though, we tended to look at one or the other. The chorus was mostly chordal. We didn't have a lot of rhythmic diversity in there. And then when we got to the breakdown, that was mostly rhythmic. We didn't have a lot of chordal diversity in there. And when we got to the outro, we kind of paired the two back together again. So I thought that was just really neat how the whole band can come together to support these ideas underneath the foundation of the song, and basically lay that foundation down for the song to exist on top of. The drums did have their moments, though. I would like to hear more of that. Like I said, most of it was just straight metronome work, really laying down the pulse of the track, being the glue that holds everything together, which certainly makes sense with how often we went into interesting rhythmic directions. You really need that glue to hold the entire song together and keep that core pulse while everyone else is dancing around it. It's not a necessity, but inside of metalcore, it tends to be the rule rather than the exception. Generally, I think just because metalcore has a wider net to toss, whereas something like experimental rock or something like gent or progressive metal can dance around rhythmic ideas like that because the audience tends to expect it and they want that really rigid, hey, where's one? I can't find the groove to this track feeling when they listen to their music. Whereas metalcore has more of a mainstream appeal, so it makes more sense to keep that core groove, that downbeat pulse somewhere in the band. And if everybody's doing odd rhythmic stuff, it's got to be the drums. Although, again, this ties me back to what I said earlier. I'd like to check out more of your stuff and see what you do when you have less restraints. Maybe the drummer is just a sick beast. And this one just kind of pared down the skill set a little bit in order to create a palatability because you're trying to sell yourself basically. It's your single. Um, the last thing I wanted to touch on is vocal texture variety. The vocalist never does clean, so we're looking at a purely textural timbre. And there were quite a few of them. It was all fry screams, I think, but we had a few different ranges to it, which I thought was nice. Metalcore sometimes can be a genre where a vocalist will find one tone and just hammer it in constantly the entire time. And it's nice to hear a couple of different perceived ranges to it. And again, that ties back into some of the guitar work and allowing the songs to have this ebb and flow, to have these really slow lows and more energetic highs. Um, I guess that's about it for that one. I would like to hear cleans. If you guys don't do cleans, that's fine. It's just I'm not a big fan of pure harshes. It works for a single song in an album, and if that's what this happens to be, that's awesome. Um, and I know metalcore has a lot of bands that are pure screams, and So this probably is that situation. I just like diversity, and if that's not y'all's jam, that's fine. Y'all are making music for you, not for me. And that about wraps it up, I suppose. We had a nice breakdown in the middle. Like I said, it allowed us to get into more of a rhythmic groove there and dig into some heavy rhythms. And then we wrapped it all back at the end with a revisiting to the composition style of our A section without actually revisiting the A. We had a brand new section just with a similar structure or a similar composition to it. The last thing I want to say is that I really enjoyed the clean guitar existing throughout our A section. I completely forgot to listen to that throughout the rest of the track. But yeah, it's just really nice to have that contrast, that dichotomy there of the really meaty, gritty distorted guitars with that clean guitar idea that we had in our intro still behind our A section. And if I listen to this again, it's going to be something I check out further, is to see how often we continue to have lighter elements working alongside the heavier ones. I wish I'd kept up with that throughout this track, but honestly, at a certain point, I just started jamming along with y'all because I was enjoying it, and yeah, like I said, I'm stoked to dig into more of what you got. I'm gonna check out some lyrics real quick, and then we'll wrap this up. Is this song about technology and probably more specifically stuff like social media putting space between people where it should be bringing people together? I mean, the whole thing about the internet, especially Web 1.0, and I'm going to try to stay on topic here because I can rant about the old days of the web. It was all about bringing people together. Message boards, GeoCity websites. It was all about finding niche areas and finding cultures and communities that you couldn't find in real life, in your physical proximity. It was all about coming together, and social media has found a way to divide us. The internet is a tool of division once again. Um, what's really cool is that there is a recurring chorus here, our A section, and I mentioned, when we came back to the D section, I said that we had a new musical idea here. We actually revisit the line or the lyrics from our A; they're the same, which I thought was pretty cool. It talks about parallel lines that flow in the space and aren't allowed to know the existence of each other. And of course, parallel lines are ones that are completely perfectly in line with each other. There is no slowly getting next to each other kind of idea. They're just always equidistant apart, always moving in the exact same direction, and so there's space between them, and they'll never touch, they'll never meet, and that's what our chorus feels like it's talking about. But then our B section is quite a bit longer, and it talks about the pain and destruction that that occurs from this, that these two lines are never allowed to meet, and they eventually crash on the ground, burning in a million pieces, linked by invisible wires with masters that control our souls. False hopes stitched into our skin like patches to cover the pain that eats us alive from the inside. About how digital masters allow us to ignore the pain inside and divide us on the outside. That, I mean, to me, I'm reading uh, social critique about the Web 2.0 stuff. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's not what they're talking about at all, but that's what I'm getting out of this one, which I think is pretty cool, and I love the analogy of parallel lines. So much space between and no way of reaching out, or even two lines that are right next to each other, no matter how much space, an infinitesimally small amount of space, but because we're always looking forward, we don't see each other. We're not allowed to know the existence of the other, as they state. Really cool lines. Um, don't really see too much of a meshing with the musical themes here, but metalcore isn't really a genre that tends to do that. It tends to be, the music is rhythmic and punchy and heavy, and sometimes the lyrics line up with that, sometimes they don't, and that's all right. So, those are my thoughts on Ravine's Palm. Let me know what you thought of this track. Anything that stood out to you, anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe give your own perspective on. Put that stuff down in the comments. up in the description box. Normally I'd put my links, but instead we'll have Ravine's links, their social media, their streaming platforms, merch, websites, anything I can find, I'm going to toss in there. Like, subscribe, ring the bell. Make sure you head over to their stuff. Like, subscribe, ring their bell, favorite, listen to their music, pick up some merch, whatever y'all want to do. Yeah, show them some love though. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're gonna pick up an album review for tomorrow. Pretty stoked about it. It's Maybe She Will. I don't remember what album it is, but I'm ready to dig into it already. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.